Why do avoidants distance themselves the moment they feel themselves depending on you? Every avoidant notice when they're starting to depend on you. They feel themselves wanting you there, needing your support, and that awareness makes them retreat. And this happens because needing someone threatens their sense of independence. Avoidants equate depending on you with losing themselves, with becoming too vulnerable, and that feeling pushes them to create space. Anyone who's dated an avoidant knows this feeling. Things are great until suddenly they're not. What I'll show you reveals why this happens every time. The distancing behavior isn't random. When an avoidant starts relying on you emotionally, when they catch themselves looking forward to your texts or wanting to share their day with you, something fundamental changes in their internal experience. That change registers as a threat. The dependency they're developing feels like they're losing control over their own emotional safety. Most people experience growing closeness as something positive, as a natural progression that feels good. Avoidants experience that same progression as increasingly dangerous. Each step toward intimacy, each moment of genuine connection, each time they find themselves turning to you for comfort or support, all of these register as vulnerability building to an unsafe level. What makes this particularly hard to deal with is that the distancing often starts right when the relationship feels like it's reaching a new level of genuine connection. You've been spending more time together. Conversations have gotten deeper. They've shared things they don't usually share. You're feeling like you're finally getting somewhere real with them. Then the cancellations start. They become harder to reach. Plans get rescheduled. The warmth that was there last week feels muted now. You're left confused because nothing bad happened. No fight occurred. No boundary was crossed that you're aware of. The change seems to come out of nowhere, but from the avoidance perspective, something very specific triggered it. They noticed they were depending on you, and that recognition alone became the problem. Dependency for an avoidant doesn't just mean needing someone. It means becoming vulnerable to loss, disappointment, and emotional pain they've structured their entire life to avoid. When they start depending on you, they're no longer in complete control of their emotional state. Your presence starts to matter. Your absence starts to register. Your responses start to affect how they feel. This connection between their well-being and your availability creates what they experience as dangerous exposure. If you're not there when they need you, they'll feel it. If you let them down, it will hurt. If you leave, they'll experience real loss. All of these possibilities exist once dependency develops, and avoidants respond to these possibilities by creating distance before the dependency gets any stronger. This typically gets worse as the relationship deepens. In the beginning, when emotional investment is still low, avoidants can often handle the connection. They might even pursue you, seem engaged, and appear comfortable with closeness. This early phase works because they're not depending on you yet. They're interested, maybe even excited, but they're not emotionally reliant on your presence. As time passes and genuine attachment starts forming, as they begin actually needing you rather than just enjoying your company, everything changes. The more real the connection becomes, the more threatening it feels. What started as comfortable and manageable turns into something that activates their deepest fears about losing themselves in another person. Avoidants often describe feeling suffocated or trapped when dependency develops, even when their partner isn't doing anything controlling or demanding. The trapped feeling comes from internal experience, not external pressure. They feel trapped by their own need for you. They feel suffocated by how much they've started to care. The relationship itself hasn't become restrictive, but their growing attachment to you makes them feel like they're losing their autonomy. This creates a situation where the better things get, the more uncomfortable they become. The more they care about you, the more urgently they need to create distance. The relationship's success becomes the very thing that makes them want to retreat. Understanding this helps explain why reasoning with an avoidant during their withdrawal often doesn't work. When they're pulling back, they're not responding to anything you did wrong. They're responding to their internal experience of dependency becoming too strong, trying to reassure them that you're not going anywhere, that they can trust you, that the relationship is safe. These reassurances miss the point entirely. The threat they're responding to isn't that you'll leave or hurt them in the future. The threat is that they're depending on you right now, in the present moment. The vulnerability exists whether you're trustworthy or not. Their discomfort comes from the dependency itself, not from doubts about your reliability. This distinction matters a lot when you're trying to handle their distancing behavior. Many people respond to an avoidance withdrawal by trying to prove their trustworthiness, by being extra available, by reassuring them constantly that the relationship is safe. These responses, while well-intentioned, actually make the problem worse. When you chase an avoidant during their withdrawal, when you try to close the distance they're creating, you're confirming their fear that depending on you means losing control. Your pursuit shows that your emotional state is affected by their withdrawal, which proves to them that you were depending on them too. This mutual dependency is exactly what they were trying to escape by creating distance in the first place. The relationship with an avoidant often feels like trying to get close to someone who keeps moving away. You adjust to their need for space, and once you've adjusted, they seem okay again. Things improve. Connection rebuilds. Then, just as you start feeling secure, they pull back again. This cycle repeats because it's driven by their internal experience of dependency, not by your behavior. When you give them space and they feel less depended on, their discomfort decreases. They can approach again without feeling threatened. But as soon as that approach leads to renewed closeness and they start depending on you again, the whole cycle restarts. This isn't about you doing something wrong and then correcting it. This is about their tolerance for dependency reaching its limit, requiring distance to reset, then approaching again once the dependency feeling has decreased. Breaking this cycle requires understanding what actually helps versus what seems like it should help. What seems like it should help is proving to the avoidant that depending on you is safe, that you're reliable, that they won't lose themselves by needing you. The problem is that dependency itself is what feels unsafe to them, regardless of how trustworthy you are. What actually helps is allowing the avoidant to experience that they can depend on you without losing their autonomy, without being controlled, without having to sacrifice their independence. This happens through your response to their distancing, not through your attempts to prevent their distancing. When an avoidant creates distance and you respond by staying consistent rather than chasing, you're showing them something important. You're demonstrating that their dependency on you doesn't mean you control them. They can pull back and you remain stable. They can need space and you don't fall apart. They can depend on you when they want to connect, and that dependency doesn't mean they have to stay connected when they need breathing room. This response is what allows avoidants to gradually become more comfortable with dependency over time. They learn through experience that depending on someone doesn't automatically mean losing themselves. Avoidants who experience that their need for space is respected, that their autonomy stays intact even within the relationship, that depending on you doesn't lead to control or demands. These avoidants can gradually tolerate more dependency. The distance they need becomes less extreme. The frequency of withdrawal decreases. How long their pullback lasts gets shorter. But this only happens if their withdrawals are met with consistency rather than pursuit, with respect for their autonomy rather than attempts to change their need for space. Most people dating avoidance struggle with this approach because it feels like accepting behavior that hurts. When someone you care about pulls away, every instinct tells you to reach out, to reconnect, to fix whatever went wrong. The difficulty is that nothing went wrong in the way you're assuming. Their withdrawal isn't a problem to be solved through more connection. It's a response to dependency that requires space to calm down, fighting against their need for space, trying to stay connected when they're actively creating distance, trying to prove that they don't need to pull away. All of these responses confirm their fear that depending on you means losing control over their own emotional experience. The practical approach involves several specific steps. When you notice an avoidant starting to distance themselves, recognize what's happening without taking it personally. Their withdrawal is about their internal experience of dependency, not about your worth or the relationship's value. Keep your own stability rather than adjusting your emotional state to match their distance. If they're pulling back, you stay consistent. You don't chase, but you also don't withdraw in response to their withdrawal. You stay available without pursuing. You give them the space they're creating without abandoning the relationship entirely. This balanced response shows that depending on you doesn't mean they have to be close all the time, but it also doesn't mean the relationship disappears when they need breathing room. During their distancing phase, avoid the urge to talk about the relationship, to discuss what's happening, to ask for reassurance about where things stand. These conversations, while they might feel necessary to you, increase pressure on the avoidant. They're creating distance specifically because dependency started feeling overwhelming. Pulling them into a conversation about the relationship, about their feelings, about where things are going. This makes the exact discomfort they're trying to escape even stronger. Instead, let the distance exist without making it into a crisis. They pull back, you stay consistent, and when they're ready to engage again, you're there without having created drama about their withdrawal. This doesn't mean accepting treatment that genuinely doesn't work for you. There's a difference between respecting an avoidant's need for space and tolerating behavior that leaves you feeling constantly insecure or neglected. The key is understanding what's driving their distancing so you can decide whether this is something you can work with or whether it doesn't match what you need in a relationship. Some people can handle the push-pull with an avoidant because they understand what's happening and don't take it personally. Others find that even with understanding, this is too unstable. Neither response is wrong. The important thing is making a conscious choice based on real understanding rather than reacting to behavior you don't get. When you're deciding whether you can work with an avoidant's distancing behavior, consider what it actually looks like in practice. Are they disappearing for weeks without explanation, or are they simply less available for a few days? Are they still responsive when you reach out, or do they ignore your messages entirely? Are they saying something about needing space, or are they just vanishing? How severe their distancing is matters when you're thinking about whether the relationship works for you. Some avoidants create moderate space while keeping basic communication and respect. Others withdraw so completely that you're left in limbo, unsure if the relationship even still exists. Your tolerance for their distancing should depend partly on how they manage it. The way an avoidant handles their need for distance reveals a lot about whether the relationship can work long-term. An avoidant who says something like, "I need some time to myself this week," is managing their need for space while keeping connection. An avoidant who simply stops responding and shows up days later without acknowledgement is handling it in a way that creates real insecurity. You can respect someone's need for autonomy while also expecting basic communication and consideration. The two aren't opposite things. Avoidants who've done some work on their attachment can usually manage their distancing in ways that don't leave their partner completely destabilized. Those who haven't often create distance in ways that feel chaotic and disrespectful. Pay attention to whether the avoidant's distancing behavior changes based on your response to it. If you stop chasing them during withdrawals and they start managing their space more considerately, that's a good sign. It suggests they were reacting to pressure and can relax when that pressure decreases. If you give them all the space they want and their distancing becomes even more extreme or lasts even longer, that's different information. It might mean they're not actually capable of being in a relationship, regardless of how their partner responds. Not all avoidants are the same. Some can function in relationships with partners who understand their needs. Others are so uncomfortable with dependency that no amount of space feels like enough. Avoidants can develop more comfort with dependency over time, but it takes a while and requires consistent experience that dependency doesn't lead to loss of self. They need to learn through repeated interactions that they can need someone, pull back when it feels like too much, and find that person still there when they're ready to connect again. They need to experience that. Depending on you doesn't mean you'll use that dependency to control them, demand constant closeness, or fall apart when they need space. These lessons can't be taught through words. They have to be learned through experience, through their withdrawal being met with your consistency rather than pursuit or abandonment. The relationship with an avoidant often improves not when they stop needing distance, but when the distance they create stops causing relationship rupture. They still might pull back when dependency feels overwhelming. That might never fully disappear. But the quality of the relationship can get significantly better if their pullback doesn't trigger crisis, doesn't lead to fights about their behavior, doesn't result in you withdrawing your availability as punishment for their distance. When avoidants learn that they can calm their discomfort with dependency through space without losing the relationship, they often need less extreme distance less frequently. Dating an avoidant means accepting that their relationship with closeness is fundamentally different from most people's experience. What feels good to you, growing dependency, increasing intimacy, building connection, can feel threatening to them. This doesn't mean they don't care about you or don't want the relationship. It means their nervous system responds to deepening attachment with alarm rather than comfort. Understanding this helps you read their behavior accurately rather than taking their distancing as rejection. They're not pulling away because you did something wrong or because they don't care. They're pulling away because they do care, because dependency has developed, and because that dependency triggers discomfort they need space to calm. The relationship can work if you're able to keep your stability through their cycles of distance and closeness, if you can give space without taking their withdrawal personally, and if you can stay available without chasing them when they pull back. But it requires accepting that the relationship will probably never look like typical relationship progression, where closeness increases steadily over time. With an avoidant, closeness increases in waves. They move toward you, dependency develops, they need distance, they pull back, calm down, then approach again. The cycle continues, ideally with each round involving less extreme distance and faster return to connection. Some people find this completely unworkable. They need more consistent closeness, more reliable availability, more straightforward relationship progression. That's valid. Dating an avoidant isn't for everyone, and recognizing that this doesn't work for you doesn't mean there's anything wrong with either person. It means you have incompatible attachment styles and relationship needs. Other people find that once they understand what's driving this, they can work with it. They don't take the distancing personally. They keep their own stability. They give space when needed and engage when the avoidant is available. For these people, the relationship can be fulfilling despite, or sometimes even because of, the space it includes. The most important factor is real understanding. When you don't understand why an avoidant distances themselves when dependency develops, their behavior feels personal, rejecting, and confusing. You're left wondering what you did wrong, how to fix it, whether they actually care about you. This confusion creates anxiety that drives chasing behavior, which makes the avoidant's need for distance stronger, which increases your anxiety, creating a cycle that damages the relationship. When you understand that their distancing is about their discomfort with dependency rather than about your worth or their feelings for you, you can respond differently. You can give them space without reading it as rejection. You can keep your stability without needing constant reassurance. You can stay available without chasing them when they pull back. The relationship with an avoidant requires you to be secure enough in yourself that their distance doesn't throw you off balance. It requires believing that their withdrawal isn't about you, even when every instinct tells you it must be your fault somehow. It requires keeping your own emotional groundedness while they cycle through discomfort with closeness. Not everyone can do this, and that's okay. But for those who can, understanding that avoidants distance themselves specifically when dependency develops, not because they don't care, but because caring creates vulnerability they find threatening, changes the entire dynamic from confusing and personal to understandable and workable. If you're dating an avoidant and you've been taking their distance personally, wondering what you're doing wrong, trying to be perfect enough that they'll stop pulling away, you can let that go now. Their distancing isn't about you being insufficient. It's about dependency itself feeling unsafe to them. The more they care about you, the more dependency develops, and the more they need distance to manage that discomfort. Your job isn't to make them comfortable with dependency by being perfect. Your job is to decide whether you can keep your own stability through their cycles of closeness and distance, whether you can give space without taking it personally, and whether this is something you can work with long-term. Some people can, others can't. Neither choice is wrong. The important thing is making that choice from understanding rather than confusion. Leave a comment sharing your experience with avoidant distancing. Have you noticed how things get good right before they pull back? How do you handle it when someone distances themselves as dependency develops? I'd love to hear your perspective. If this helped you understand what's really happening when avoidants create distance, hit the like button and subscribe for more content on navigating attachment in relationships. Thanks for watching.